Welcome. And I'm here to talk with Joe Carson of Delinea about the future of business in the digital age and the, so to speak, number one technical innovation he sees as most impactful for the future of business when it goes more and more digital. Welcome, Joe. How are you?
It's a pleasure to be here, and many thanks for having me. It's great.
Yeah, so maybe you give a little bit of a background of your person first, and then
Absolutely. So my name is Joe Carson, as you mentioned. I'm a chief security scientist and security researcher. So I've been in the industry for quite a long time, and primarily more on the security hacking side of things, so looking and understanding what the risks are to organizations. But I've been very benefited from actually being based in Estonia for the last 20 years, where I've seen Estonia really innovating, especially in the digital space. And that has really enlightened me to all the possibilities that we have globally.
Okay, so when you need or to pick one tech innovation, which one would it be?
So I think it comes from a journey. I think many years ago when I was working in the IT space, and we started getting into where mobile and connectivity started to growing and making everyone connected.
Yeah.
And we started moving into this era of bring your own device, so BYOD, where people basically bring the device of choice, what they wanted, what they were familiar with, what they were comfortable with, and it could do multiple functions for them. It could do for work and also personal. So this was an idea, and I think in the past couple of years, we're seeing this even evolve even further, where I say we've now moved into the bring your own office, where it's no longer the person actually just basically bring a device, or they're actually almost like a little droplet cloud. That person is now basically a mini cloud walking around as a mobile office, and the mobile device is making that happen. I think the next phase of this is really moving it further, where it'll actually move into bring your own identity. That person is the best person who knows how they are. And what it really comes down to is, rather than organizations having to provision identities for everybody, what that person can simply bring is their own identity of choice, the one that they wish to use. And it all comes down to the trust anchor, how they verify the trusted sources, and what level that trust comes in. I think that's what's important. So I think organizations will move away from provisioning and owning and configuring and maintaining identities, and they'll move to much more focusing around access and authorization. What's that person allowed to do in my organization?
Okay, and when you talk about digital business and the value of technical innovation to digital business, what is the business value of bring your own identity?
It really mixes, you think about even, I always like to compare it with the car industry, because I think sometimes that's the same scenario. And when I'm living in Estonia, a lot of people are now moving away from owning cars. They have the share economy. You can go and pick up a scooter, you can pick up a bicycle, you can pick up a car. And it really means that you no longer need to own that asset. You no longer need to have that cost, that ability. And it means onboarding and giving access, I think, really becomes a very important value to businesses, where you can actually eliminate something you no longer need to manage and focus on. It allows you to focus on your core business, because those are added costs, added needs. And I think when organizations get a massive business impact, it means that it also becomes federated. It allows businesses to be able to use those, that access across multiple services.
So it is that, say, okay, this user has proof that it's Martin, a proof that he's part of KuppingerCole analysts, and in a certain role at KuppingerCole analysts, and because of that, I decide at runtime what Martin is allowed to do.
Absolutely, just-in-time access.
Yes.
That's all about, and I think that's really important when we think about that, is when you get just-in-time access, and also it really means is that whatever that provider of identity can provide additional security controls and sources, it really means that even after you've finished that task, your identity can no longer be abused to actually get access to that system again, or access to that service. Yeah. So it allows organizations to really get into just-in-time access and control that actually risk landscape.
And which identities are we talking about? So is it the consumer, customer, the partner, the workforce? And what about the non-human identities even?
Absolutely. I think it comes into all of those. I think the non-human identities really comes down to organizations will still have to maintain those, because those are assets. They might be serviced assets from MSPs or hosting providers, but for the human identities, it could be multiple. It could be that human decides to use something of a social media application log on, but the trust of that is much lower. So you'd want to find a way to increase the security controls and the risk. So you're not going to basically trust that identity face value. You want to have some trusted sources. So depending on the value of those trust anchors and where they're coming from, will depending on the trust that you permit.
And on the other hand, I think even when we look at workforce, take the Great Resignation in the US, it means that more and more of your workforce is not your traditional employee anymore.
Correct.
So I think then bring your own identity makes a lot more sense, even in that area. So what will happen to organizations that don't that don't enable bring your own identity?
I think those organizations will struggle to get the people. It becomes a skills resource issue. If you're not providing a service that employee wants to bring with them, they will choose another organization. We're already in an industry of a massive skills gap. And we're in the situation right now where organizations are really having to decide to provide a hybrid working environment for employees to keep them in that organization. So I think that this will become another factor to being able to actually influence and attract the future talent, because you're providing them a service that they want to be able to use. Everyone wants to be able to work when they want, where they want, how they want, and you need to provide that as a service. And if you don't, you'll actually struggle to get the people to help your business basically be successful.
Okay. And where do we stand with bring your own identity?
I think some places have actually really, there's some places that's really embraced it. I look at Estonia as a great example, is that in Estonia, you've basically got a government issued identity. And with that issued identity, you can go and use it basically in the post office. You can use it in the bank. You can use it to do taxes. You can use it as a loyalty card. You can use it as your train pass. So really, that means that identity, which is of course been issued by government, and it has a trust verification, trust anchor there, but you can use it in so many services and businesses. You can use it as your employee card.
But isn't it maybe that the bigger challenge is not the identity, but what we do with the identity? So you brought up trust and time access, but most of the access controls we have are static entitlements.
Correct. I think that really comes into basically security context. Is one, there has to be additional, of course, policies and changes in place to make sure that just-in-time privilege and just-in-time access is enabled. So it really comes down to making sure that you actually, when that person needs to have access to the data, that there's controls in place to make sure that why do they need to have access and what's the question they're actually looking to ask. So I think that's where we can get into security context. Is that person new? Is it known before? Have they had this request before? Does their peer, can they verify them in real time? So I believe that it's the security context which will enable the ability to get just-in-time privileges and access.
Okay. Joe, thank you for your insights into this. And I also honestly believe that bring your own identity will be a very important thing in the future across every human identity, every use case. So thank you very much for taking the time to talking with me. Thank you very much for everyone listening to this, and hope to have you tuning in soon again to one of the other episodes in this podcast. Thank you.